Kiara was humiliated at the door of an exclusive store, simply because of her skin color. But instead of walking away, she took a step that would change her life, and the lives of those who dared to humiliate her, forever. Her next move would shock even the most jaded. But let's start from the beginning. The morning was sunny, and Kiara James, as usual, was planning a productive day. She needed to buy new equipment for her business, a startup she'd built from scratch over the last few years. Kiara was proud of how far she'd come. Her company was growing, and she continued to break the barriers she faced as a black woman in the business world. That day, she decided to stop by an elite electronics store in the city center, a place known for its high-quality products and solid reputation. Upon arriving at the store, Kiara parked her car and confidently walked toward the entrance. She was already thinking about which models of equipment she needed when her steps were halted by a tall white security guard standing in her path. His cold, assessing expression immediately put Kiara on alert. The guard stood like a wall, clearly not planning to move. "Sorry, ma'am, but I can't let you in." His voice was low and indifferent, but there was something more than formality in his words. Kiara stopped, momentarily confused. "Why?" Her voice was firm, but uneasy thoughts began to flicker in her mind. She glanced over his shoulder. People were coming in and out freely. No one else seemed to face any barriers. The guard smirked and added, "This store isn't for everyone." His gaze was fixed on Kiara, and at that moment she realized it wasn't about the store's rules. It was about her skin color. Kiara felt a wave of indignation rise within her. Throughout her professional journey, she'd encountered bias and discrimination, but this direct, blatant humiliation was a low blow. She tried to stay calm. "Do you have any proof that I can't enter? Is this some sort of personal rule?" The guard just shrugged, signaling that the conversation was over. He had no intention of budging. Bystanders, noticing the scene, cast quick glances, with some shaking their heads slightly, but no one intervened. Kiara's heart pounded, but instead of gritting her teeth and walking away, she took a step back and pulled out her phone. She quickly snapped a photo of the guard and his unyielding stance at the door. "This isn't over," she quietly said, feeling her anger give way to determination. Without wasting more time on a pointless argument, Kiara left, already planning her next move. She knew she couldn't just let this go. This moment became a turning point for her, where all the emotions she had bottled up needed to be channeled into action. That evening, Kiara sat at the kitchen table, twirling a cup of tea in her hands. The events of the day still echoed in her mind. Across the room, on the couch, her husband, Michael, was scrolling through news on his tablet, but he set it aside when he noticed her tense expression. "You were supposed to be back from the store quickly," Michael said, eyeing her intently. He knew Kiara well and could tell something had happened. She was always confident, but now there was a mix of worry and anger in her eyes. Kiara took a slow breath and told him about the encounter with the guard. Her voice was calm, but Michael caught the bitterness in every word. "He just wouldn't let me in, Michael. No explanation. It was perfectly clear. This wasn't a mistake. It was pure discrimination." Michael listened carefully, not interrupting. As a politician, he had dealt with similar situations throughout his career. But hearing that it had happened to his wife, a woman who always fought for justice and equality, was particularly painful. "That's awful," he said, frowning. "But you know, this isn't just a personal slight. It's part of the entire system we've been fighting for years. What matters is how we respond to it." "I know," Kiara replied, her hands clenching into fists. "But you know what hurts the most? I thought things like this were slowly fading away, that we were moving forward. And today, it felt like they reminded me that for some people, I still don't belong, as if I'd been thrown back years." Michael came over and sat next to her, taking her hand. "This isn't your defeat, Kiara. You don't have to put up with this, and you have the strength to change it." At that moment, their daughter, Madison, walked into the room with her school books in hand. At 14, she was old enough to understand what her parents were talking about. She saw the worried look on her mom's and dad's faces and asked, "Mom, what's wrong? You seem upset." Kiara looked at her daughter, and her heart clenched. She always tried to protect Madison from things like this, but as a mother, she knew that one day her daughter would face the same issues she did. Some people still only see our skin color, not who we really are, Kiara explained gently, trying to put it in simple terms. But that doesn't mean we should stay silent or give in. It means we have to be stronger and smarter. Madison nodded, deep in thought. Kiara understood that she and Michael were setting an example for their daughter, and that added even more responsibility. She didn't want Madison to feel like a victim, but she also knew how important it was for her daughter to know the truth. After dinner, when Madison had gone to her room, Kiara and Michael returned to their conversation. She shared her doubts and anxieties. Maybe I should just let it go. I've gotten used to things like this. But now I think about Madison, about her growing up in this world. I want to show her that it's possible to fight and win. Michael nodded, understanding her feelings. You know this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. You've always been strong, and if anyone can change things, it's you. You're not alone in this fight. These words were exactly what Kiara needed. The inner conflict that had been tearing her apart began to subside. She realized that she had support, not just from her husband and daughter, but from all those who believed in equality and justice. Kiara no longer felt alone in this. She made a decision. This wasn't just about the incident with the guard. It was about challenging a system that still, after decades, perpetuated inequality and bias. And she knew this fight would become an important part of her journey. When Kiara went to bed, her mind was clear. Tomorrow, she would return to that store, but not as a customer. The next day, Kiara returned to that very store, but this time, she wasn't there to shop. Throughout the night, as her thoughts and emotions crystallized into firm resolve, she made numerous phone calls. Her business contacts, friends, and colleagues had helped her orchestrate something extraordinary. Kiara had decided to buy the store. When she entered the store, feeling a new calm and confidence within herself, the same security guard was standing at his post near the entrance. He recognized Kiara immediately, and his face tightened. Clearly, he hadn't expected her return. He stepped forward, preparing to stop her again. "Excuse me, ma'am, but he began, but Kiara didn't let him finish. "I don't need your excuse," she calmly responded, her voice steady and assured. "As of today, this store belongs to me." The guard froze, and the expression on his face shifted from arrogant to stunned. He clearly didn't understand what was happening. "What?" he mumbled, his confidence evaporating. Kiara, maintaining her composure, explained, "Yesterday, you denied me entry without any valid reason. But now, everything has changed. I bought this store, and if you didn't know, I'm no longer just a customer. I'm the owner." His face paled, and he stood there for several seconds, trying to process the fact that his life had just been turned upside down. This was not a moment where he could continue his usual behavior with the same self-assuredness that had come from the old bias system. Kiara continued, "You're fired. You no longer work here." The guard was speechless. He tried to say something, but no words came out. Everything had happened too quickly and unexpectedly. He felt the ground slip from beneath him, realizing that his privileges had vanished as fast as his job. Kiara didn't give him time to offer any excuses. With a simple gesture, she pointed to the door, and the guard, without saying another word, turned and slowly walked away, feeling the eyes of the employees and customers who had begun to gather around, watching the scene unfold. Once she was alone, Kiara exhaled. This moment was triumphant, but it wasn't about personal revenge. She knew that the issue wasn't just about firing this particular guard. It was about changing the mindset. This store would now become an example of how no one has the right to discriminate against or humiliate others based on the color of their skin. After the guard left, Kiara addressed the store employees. She made it clear that times had changed. From now on, this would be a place where every customer, regardless of race, gender, or social status, would feel welcome. Her goal wasn't just to run a successful business, but to create a culture of equality and fairness. Kiara's story quickly spread throughout the city and across social media. People began writing about what she had done, praising her courage and determination. It became more than just a story about an incident in a store. It became a symbol of the changes people were yearning for. Kiara realized that her actions had helped many others feel stronger and more confident in standing up for their rights. That day, she didn't just acquire a store. She proved to herself and the world that justice is possible when you refuse to back down from the fight. From that day forward, Kiara's store became a symbol of change that people talked about all over the city. Local media picked up the story, and social networks quickly spread it across the country. People admired her bravery and strength, how she had managed to turn a situation full of injustice to her advantage. Every day, more and more people came to the store, not only to support Kiara's business, but also to express their respect for her principles and courage. Among them, surprisingly, was the very security guard she had fired. A few weeks after the incident, he returned to the store, this time not in uniform, but in plain clothes, with slumped shoulders and a completely different expression on his face. His former confidence and smugness were gone. Instead, he wore the look of someone burdened with guilt and regret. He approached the counter and, avoiding eye contact with Kiara, quietly asked to meet with her. When Kiara was informed of his arrival, she decided she was ready to see him. Her heart no longer held the anger it had on the day of his dismissal. She knew that many actions, driven by prejudice and hatred, came from ignorance and fear. Her goal had always been not only to change systems, but also to change people. The security guard sat in a small office in the back of the store, nervously fidgeting with his hands. Kiara walked in and sat across from him, not saying a word. For a few moments, there was silence, until he finally spoke. "I came to apologize." His voice was quiet but steady. "I realize now that I was wrong. My job, my life, they've gone off track, and I made mistakes. But back then, I didn't see how deeply they had pulled me in. I never thought about how my behavior affected others." Kiara listened attentively, her face calm, without the traces of fury she had felt on the day she fired him. "Why did you decide to come now?" she asked, watching his reaction. He sighed and continued. "After that incident, I lost more than just my job. Even those I considered friends turned their backs on me. When the story spread, I had to face the reality that I had been part of the problem. I was part of a system that made others feel small, and only now do I understand that I need not only to apologize to you, but also to change myself." Kiara looked at him for a long time, contemplating his words. She knew that forgiveness was a powerful tool, but she also knew that change didn't happen overnight. "I'm glad you've realized your mistakes," she finally said. "But you have to understand, this is not just about words. Apologies are only the first step. Change requires action. Are you ready for that?" The guard nodded, and Kiara sensed that his remorse was genuine. She wasn't planning to give him his job back, but she believed that he had a chance to transform his life and move beyond his former prejudices. Meanwhile, the store continued to thrive. Kiara had hired a new staff, carefully selecting those who shared her values. She began conducting regular training on bias awareness to ensure her employees understood the importance of equality and respect for all customers, regardless of their background or status. Her actions caught the attention of many other businesses in the city. Soon, other store owners and company leaders started implementing similar initiatives. This was a true wave of change, sparked by one small but powerful victory. A few months later, Kiara received a letter. It was from one of her old clients, who shared how her story had inspired him to fight against discrimination in his own workplace. She read it with a smile, feeling that her efforts had not been in vain. Kiara's story wasn't just about standing up to one security guard. It was about fighting a system of bias that seemed unshakable, but was, in reality, crumbling under the weight of determination and strength of spirit. Kiara not only changed the course of events for herself, but also inspired others to stand up for their rights and to fearlessly confront injustice. Her store became a symbol of how one person can change the world around them if they refuse to give up and fight for what's right.